Live NFL trivia every Wednesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge for a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. One of the most frustrating things that coaches have a tendency to do is to overthink things. They'll create scenarios in their head that never play out. Something's working really well, and the opposition has no answers for it? Well, at some point, it's going to stop working. So let's get ahead of the curve now. It's one of those things that doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. When coaches decide to go against the mantra of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, it can sometimes be disastrous, as the changes they make actually wind up costing their team the game. Deciding not to run the ball when you've had success with that all day because eventually the defense is going to stop it, even though they haven't stopped it yet. Deciding to not pick on a cornerback who's been struggling all day because eventually he's going to figure it out, even though he hasn't yet. These are adjustments for the sake of adjustments, and they're stupid. And man, do we have a good one today. Because in a 1984 game on Thanksgiving, the Patriots called one of the worst special teams plays imaginable for seemingly no reason whatsoever. And the decision was so bad that it not only cost them the game, but derailed their entire season in the process. In front of a national television audience, with the entire country watching as they were finishing up Thanksgiving dinner, the Patriots decided to completely ruin dessert for a whole lot of people. Because little did anyone watching the game know that the Pats were about to deliver the stupidest and worst kickoff in the history of the holiday. November 22nd, 1984. We're at Texas Stadium for this Thanksgiving Day game between the New England Patriots and the Dallas Cowboys. This is an absolutely monumental game. I think that goes without saying. And this isn't even counting the fact that this is the first time ever that the Patriots are playing on Turkey Day. The Patriots enter this game with an 8-4 record, tied with the Los Angeles Raiders for the final wildcard spot in the AFC. Barring a miracle, there is no way that the Pats can win the AFC East, as the Dolphins are 11-1. So they have to keep pace with the Raiders for that wildcard spot, making this a must-win game. As for the Cowboys, they enter this one at 7-5, tied with the Giants and Rams for the final wildcard spot in the NFC, and tied with Washington for the lead in the NFC East as well. If they win this game, for the moment, they lead the division. Lose this game, and their road to the postseason with 3 games to go just got a whole lot harder. And early on, it was looking like the Cowboys were going to be in control. It didn't help that on New England's very first drive of the game, on the third play from scrimmage, Tony Eason threw a pick six right into the arms of Michael Downs, who took it 27 yards to the house for the first score of the game. That was the first and only pick six of Downs' entire career. It was that kind of day for New England offensively to start things off. The offensive line gave Eason no protection, as he got sacked an astonishingly high 10 times. Through the first 3 quarters, the Pats only had 3 points, which came on a Tony Franklin field goal from 29 yards out in the first quarter. The Cowboys led it 17-3, thanks to a 9-yard touchdown pass from Danny White to Tony Hill in the third, and it looked like the Cowboys were about to win their 5th straight Thanksgiving game, and their 8th in their last 9 dating all the way back to 1974. But the Patriots weren't going down without a fight. Just when people started to suspect that the game was getting out of hand, New England quickly drove down the field and opened up the 4th quarter with a touchdown drive, culminating in a 1-yard pass by Eason to Derek Ramsey. That made it a 17-10 ball game. And with 3 minutes left, they get it back again, needing to go roughly 70 yards down the field to tie the game. Sure enough, they do just that. Eason gave it to Craig James for a 43-yard gain, as James took it right down to the goal line. 1 play later, following the 2-minute warning, Eason sneaks it and takes it in himself for the game-tying touchdown. There's 1:58 left in regulation, so the goal here is simple. Kick it deep, pin the Cowboys back, and try and get a stop to get the ball back or force overtime. Now is not the time to try anything stupid. Now is not the time to try an onside kick, or a squib kick, or a...
Mike open first. All right, here they come with the kickoff. And a good return. Tim from the University of Montana.
Well, I'm sure this won't backfire at all. Welcome to Dumb Decisions. Before I break down what happened here, this whole series is about taking an in-depth look at decisions made during games that were clearly awful from the start. This isn't something that looked bad in hindsight. Rather, this is something that looked awful almost immediately. These are moves where your gut instinct tells you right away that there is no way this can possibly work. And sure enough, your gut instinct was smarter than that of an NFL head coach. And for this one, we're taking a look at the mind of New England Patriots head coach Raymond Berry. I have nothing but praise for Berry most of the time. He's one of the greatest receivers in the history of the sport, and he was an awfully good head coach too. He guided the Patriots to their first ever Super Bowl appearance in franchise history, and only finished below 500 once in his 5.5 seasons with the team. Considering the talent on some of those Pats teams and the dysfunction in the organization, he did one heck of a job. But this decision? in his 4th game with the team after taking over as the interim midway through the season? Yeah, not his finest hour. So with that being said, let's take a look at why calling a squib kick with 2 minutes left in a tie ball game is not a good idea. And before I go any further, I want to emphasize that this was not a mistake or a mishit by kicker Tony Franklin. This was a conscious decision by the coaching staff to go for the squib. If it was not, and the plan all along was to boot it deep like a regular kick, I would not be talking about this, because that would not fall in the realm of dumb decisions, but rather player error, and those are 2 different things. Now there are 2 times where it is appropriate to call a squib kick. There are 2 instances where you can call a play like this, and I'll have no problem with it whatsoever. The first is if there's so little time left on the clock that going with the squib will prevent the main returner from scoring a touchdown, and you put it in the hands of an offensive lineman or someone with less experience. 2 seconds left? Knock yourself out. 5 seconds left? Go for it. But 2 minutes left? That's really early. That doesn't apply here. No way whatsoever does that apply here. Which brings us to the second instance, which is when a returner is so good that your goal is to avoid kicking it to him at all costs. And as we're about to find out, that is insanely stupid for this instance. First off, let's look at who the Cowboys had back returning kicks. It was a man by the name of Gary Allen. He had been in the league since 1982, and at the time of this kick, had returned 52 kicks in his career. You know how many of them went for a touchdown? A grand total of none of them. You're looking at some of these returns right now. He was a pretty solid punt returner, I'll give him that, but as a kick returner, he was fairly pedestrian, and even that might be a bit kind to him. Entering this return, he averaged 20.1 yards per return in his career, and on the season, he was averaging 19.9 yards per return. To put that number into perspective, among all qualified returners in 1984, which there were 35 of, Allen's average of 19.9 yards per return would have put him 29th. That's not good. The Patriots were scared of kicking to the guy that was 29th in the league, a league which there are 28 teams in yards per return. You realize how insane that sounds when you put it like that, right? Here was a guy averaging slightly above 20 yards per return in his career, 19.9 yards per return this season, and 19.6 yards per return in his last 9 games before this kick. And the Pats were scared to put the game in his hands? This isn't Devin Hester we're talking about here. It's Gary freaking Allen. And even worse, there was no indication whatsoever during the game that the Pats were having any trouble stopping Allen on kickoff returns. What you're watching right now is every kickoff return that Allen had during this game. This is the reason the Pats decided to call a squib kick. On the 3 returns, Allen took it 21 yards, and 17 yards. Not once did the Cowboys cross the 30-yard line on a kickoff return. Allen was averaging about 20 yards per return all day, so right in line with his average. If we assume that Franklin kicks it to the 5, the Cowboys are starting inside the 30-yard line, needing to drive a solid 40 yards just to have a shot at a field goal for Raphael Septien, whose career long was 53 yards. Unless the Pats didn't do their job in kickoff coverage, which again, had not been a problem all game, they would have forced Dallas to drive a long way when their offense had led just 2 scoring drives all game, since the first touchdown was a pick 6. But alas, the coaching staff decided not to do that. And if you think it can't get any worse, oh trust me, it does. To add insult to injury, aside from the fact that the Pats had done a great job containing kickoffs all day, and the fact that Gary Allen was not that good of a return man, the Patriots have been excellent all season in kickoff coverage. Entering that game, the Pats had not allowed a kickoff return touchdown all season. The last time the Patriots allowed a kickoff return touchdown was September 18, 1978, more than 6 years ago, when in a game against the Baltimore Colts, Joe Washington took it 90 yards to the house for a score. Not that kickoff return touchdowns are the best way to measure how effective a kickoff coverage unit is, but yards per return is a pretty effective way. It's the best stat we have. And entering this play, the Pats had allowed 19.3 yards per return all season. They finished the year with the 6th best kickoff coverage unit in football from a yards per return standpoint. And despite all of the history being on your side, and despite all the evidence being in your favor, you're not going to trust your kickoff coverage unit when they've done a great job all season, and have done a great job all game? It just doesn't add up. Naturally, Berry was asked in the post-game press conference about this questionable decision, and he took the blame for it. Berry said the squib was a mistake, a coaching mistake. That's as far as I go with that. It's my responsibility. However, afterwards, special teams coach Dante Scarnecchia took the fall, saying the idea was to not give them a returnable ball. It was my decision. It gave them good field position, and in retrospect, it was a mistake. I should have had him kick off deep and take the chance. It was a rare blunder for him, widely regarded as one of the greatest assistant coaches in the history of the sport and a Patriots legend. But whoever was to blame for it, whether it was Berry or Scarnecchia, the end result was incredibly costly, not just with regards to the outcome of this game, but to the outcome of this entire season. To put it lightly, the Patriots would not recover from this heartbreaking loss. This was close to a must-win game for the Pats if they wanted to have a realistic shot at the postseason, and after the tailspin they were about to embark on following this awful finish to the game, their playoff hopes were burned faster than a turkey that was in the oven for too long. The Pats got blown out in embarrassing fashion the following week to the St. Louis Cardinals by a final score of 33-10, then followed that up with a 27-17 loss to the Philadelphia Eagles. In other words, their NFC East tour was a disaster. New England finished the season 9-7, with that 3-game losing streak that started on Thanksgiving being what did them in. And the catalyst to that losing streak? The awful decision to try a squib kick for no reason, even when the evidence suggested otherwise. So what do we learn from all this? Don't switch things up for no reason. If there's a player on the opposing team that isn't very good, that hasn't done anything all season or for his entire career, and hasn't shown anything on the contrary in the first 58 minutes of the game, don't all of a sudden expect him to change who he is over the final 2 minutes. If your kickoff coverage unit is good, then have faith in them that they'll continue to be good, especially when they're giving you no reason to doubt otherwise and when they've been good all game. Don't give teams lifelines just for the sake of giving them lifelines. And if something's been working all game and all season, changing it up inside the final 2 minutes of a tied game that is a must-win game just makes you and your team look ridiculous. Because when all these elements are in play, you can't exactly be surprised when this play backfires. Talk about a dumb decision. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes, link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JaguarGator9, and subscribe to 60-Second NFL History on YouTube. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.